फतेह। श्री भगवती जी सहाय वार श्री भगवती जी की पातशाही दसवीं प्रथम भगवती सिमर कै गुरु नानक लेते आए फिरंत गुरु ते अमरदास रामदास हमेशा हाय। अर्जुन हर गोविंद सुमरो श्री हर राय श्री हर कृष्ण तय जस डिठे सब दुख जाय तेग बहादुर सिमरन कर मन दवे ताय सब ठाई सहाय दसवें पातशाह श्री गुरु गोबिंद सिंह जी सब ठाई सहाय दसवें पातशाह दस रूप तन तन श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी दे पाठ दे जागदा ध्यान करके खालसा सा संत बोलो जी वाहिगुरु। हिन मानिया दे मान ने तानिया दे तान ने उत्ते दी ओट धन धन श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी दसवें पातशाह दे सतरूप जागदी जोत हाजर नाजर आप जी नूं हाजर नाजर जान के आप जी दे हजूर चरणा कोना पास अरदास बेनती जोत दी बेनती आप जी दे हजूर श्री गुरुद्वारा रामगढ़िया रेलवे सिक्योरिटी टीम वालों NDMU ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम शुरू करने लई आप जी दे हजूर अरदास बेनती जोत दी आप जी कृपा करनी सकती मेरा प्रयास रखना सकते मेरा प्रयास रख के जो कार्य आरंभ कर लगे निराश करने सारे ही सिक्योरिटी मैंबरों के सिर से मेरा प्रयास रखना दे रोकता तंदुरुस्ती दान बख्शिश करने चढ़ती कला करनी कृपा करो प्रोग्राम आरंभ कर दी आज्ञा बख्शो सही गुरमुख प्यारे मेल जिन्होंने नेत्रा नाम चितावे नानक नाम चढ़ती कला तेरे भाने सरबत दा भला। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। बोले सो निहाल सत श्री अकाल। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह।
Heavenly Father, we ask you to bless this gathering of today's NDMU induction training. We ask you to bless us all who are here, keep us safe during this afternoon. Let us learn and benefit from all this induction training that our team is going to present. We ask this in Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Malik Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahus samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad.
I would now like to call Inspector Shamala to lead us in the next training, introduction to disaster management. Apologies for that. I would like to call Malkit Singh, the National Coordinator, to welcome the Director.
Good afternoon all. Good afternoon again. Thank you. Dr. Duncan Uchin, PhD, MBS, our Director for the National Disaster Management Unit, Inspector Shamala, our national team officials present, our regional coordinator from Eastern Isa Premji, Vinod Ramji, and Isa Premji from Nairobi, and all the members present and prospective members present. A big welcome. Today is not my day to say much. I would request if my deputy, His Excellency, the Ambassador to Nepal, would like to say a few words. Maybe you can say a few words, sir.
that we are there to move on. We were hiding behind the politics, we cannot move, we cannot do. Now there is a new president, a new elected president, and we are happy for that. So we are moving on. This is going to be our first training, and we'll be moving on. So please put your hand together and let us move. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. And well, I don't want to say much. It's just that we are trying to set up the National Disaster Management Unit volunteer section countrywide. So us as a national team, we are more into policy, and we're trying to get all the 8 regions going into the 47 counties. Like Nairobi, we have 17 sub-counties and 85 wards. So we are trying to see how we can spread our movement into all of Nairobi. So without saying much, I would like to invite our director to come and brief us more about the NDMU. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. To the National Coordinator, Mr. Malkit, EBS, to the Deputy, His Excellency Jimmy, the Regional Coordinator, who is our host here in Nairobi, Mr. Isa, and also the Eastern Regional Coordinator, Mr. Vinod, all the national team present here today, NDMU personnel, and all volunteers. Today is a very important day, more so in the calendar of the National Disaster Management Unit. As you may have been told, the National Disaster Management Unit is a unit within the Ministry of the Interior, more specifically in the National Police Service, under the Office of the Inspector General of Police. And this unit was formed in the year 2013 to be able to offer leadership and coordination, especially during emergencies. And we are privileged to have you as our volunteers. Being a volunteer is not very easy, but as you are all aware, it takes a lot of your time and resources to be won, and we do appreciate your presence here today. Now, the management of disasters is something that cannot be done by the government alone. You realize that globally there are a lot of issues that are taking place. The severity and the intensity of the hazards that we are experiencing is increasing. And if you can recall, just recently, we have the floods in Pakistan. If you look at how the floods are behaving, then you can ask yourself what happens if it happens here in Kenya. We know that climate change has affected so many issues, and the environment has been affected in one way or the other. And due to population growth and poverty, most people are more vulnerable, and we are likely to experience loss of lives and destruction of property should we have such kind of floods here in Kenya. Kenya is going to experience some floods within the next 2 to 3 weeks. However, in the month of October, November, and December, we are going to have a suppressed rainfall, which means we are going to face drought. And so we should be prepared for that, because we are going to experience drought, and because we may not have the coping capability, most of our animals, most of our people, even the environment will be adversely affected. This has been given to us as an early warning sign, and we need to prepare adequately for this. It has been occasioned by the global climate change, global climate change and those unpredictable events that occur within the world. So today, the reason why we are here is for us to be able to have a glimpse and speak in one voice about disaster management. As you may have been told elsewhere or through your other forums of information gathering, the management of disasters takes place within 4 phases. We have the mitigation phase. In the mitigation phase, we put structural measures to ensure that when that event occurs, then the effect or the impact of that kind of event is lessened. And the structural measures are accompanied by non-structural measures. Those are through laws, policies, and regulations. Then we have preparedness phase. This is the phase where we are. We are now preparing ourselves. We are building our capacity. We are acquiring equipment. We are creating awareness and sensitizing our people so that our response can be coordinated. And then the third phase is response. This is the phase where our assistance is really required. This is the phase where the hazard has impacted the society, there's loss of life, there's destruction of property, and so our intervention will ensure that we minimize that kind of loss of life and destruction of property. Then the fourth phase, which again builds into the mitigation phase, is the recovery phase. Now this recovery phase is where now we look at both short-term and long-term measures that can ensure that people go back to their normal life. If it is shelter, we give them temporary shelter, we give them permanent shelter. If it is a livelihood that has been lost, we ensure that we see ways in which we can revive their livelihood. If people have been traumatized, we look at ways in which we can offer psychosocial support to the people and so many other factors. And again, we build into mitigation, and the phase continues in that kind of cyclic process. So you will be introduced to these aspects, and then thereafter we'll be able to see how best we can make this a continuous process so that we benefit as we also offer our services to the people. Last but not least is to thank the management of the temple for giving us the opportunity to host you here. We are very grateful because this is one of the community services that is expected that you'll be able to offer in one way or another to sustain growth and development within the society. Thank you very much, and I wish you a fruitful training as you move forward. Thank you. I now call the regional coordinator for Nairobi, Ms. Kalisa, to take it forward.
While we are waiting for them to set up, I would like to recognize the presence of our Deputy National Operations Coordinator, Mr. Manminder Singh Jandu. Can you be upstanding, please? And then we are also coping a couple of members into the national team. One is Mr. Mohan Bhatti. I think everybody knows him. We have put him in charge of membership. So whenever you see him reaching out to you, matters membership, you know he's officially there. We're just waiting for our next meeting to regularize him there, but he's already there. So a big hand for him. Then we have Tejinder Singh Katoria. We have taken him in the national team as the Strategic Communications Director. So all communications will be channeled through him. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Thomas Shamala from the National Disaster Management Unit. Currently, I'm holding the position of the head of department, disaster risk reduction, as well as the liaison person for NDMU volunteers program. As you've been told earlier on that we are supporting this program, and one of the initiatives in our support is to ensure that you develop your capacity in terms of knowledge, so that whenever you engage with the community, you are able to do the right thing. So today, we will engage you in a brief discussion on the basic concepts. Our director has taken you through the 4 phases of disaster management cycle, and within those phases, there are some action. There are some actions that we're supposed to take in terms of addressing the situation or an event, or lessening the impact through mitigated measures. So according to our program, for the introduction, we're supposed to cover a little bit of a few concepts. I'll focus on 2. One concept is the incident command system that we have been applying it as a best practice to manage events and incidences. Then the other concept will be about emergency interoperability. But before we finish, I will have an opportunity to also welcome my colleague who will take us through some common hazards. Just a basic awareness on how to deal with the mostly fire and structural failure. So for the concept of incident command, this is a command and control concept that we've incorporated it in our response plan, the national response plan. We've been applying it. It is based on the international standards. Most of the developing countries have been using it. So I'm trying to share with you what the structure looks like and what are the responsibilities of those who are called upon to manage the incidents. We are applying this concept because of the challenges that have been faced before, globally, and even we've seen it within our area of operations and the country perspective. Without this concept being applied, we normally see the aspect of lack of accountability,
poor communication, lack of planning process, overloaded incident commander, no method of interagency requirements, and these were the areas that were identified when this concept was being developed way back in 1970. So this is the definition. Incident Command System, or ICS, is a standardized all-SIM, all-hazard incident management concept that has three very basic elements. One is that the Incident Command System defines organization of personnel, facilities, equipment, and communication by using standard terminology, personnel units, and supervisory titles that will be shown after these slides. Then within itself, we call it a modular organization because it has a structure that develops from top to down. Top to down meaning that if you are attending to an incident, the first man at the site or at the scene usually assumes the role of an incident commander. So the overall in charge, the position of the in charge, is the one to be established. So it adopts the top-down version. And whenever this incident escalates to a more complex situation, then we have other structures being developed to support the incident. Number three, it allows for the cooperation of multiple entities or agencies. When applying this incident command system concept, you realize that it accommodates a number of entities that will be managing that incident. Each and every entity, whether it is an individual, an organization, or an institution that comes on board to support the incident, have a place to fit in within the concept. Now, I will not talk about the definition of an incident because of time, we go ahead. But you need to know that when defining incident within the concept of ICS, it is divided into 5. An incident can be more complex or less complex. So the less complex incidents are given a type of type 5. From the illustration you've seen in the presentation, type 5 incidents within ICS are classified as less complex. Type 1 incidents are classified as more complex. So less complex, the complexity, it will be in terms of the resources required to address the incident, the time also that is required to address this incident. And in simplicity, the inverted triangle gives us a pictorial representation on the complexity of the typing of the incidents in 5 categories. So at the top is type 1, which is more complex, and you can see the clock showing that there is more time that is required to manage that incident. There are more people or resources that are required to be mobilized to address that incident. Vis-a-vis type 1, which is below the triangle in the inverted form, it requires less time and less resources in terms of personnel and maybe equipment to address them. So you realize in the country's perspective, most of the incidences that we've been facing falls under the categories type either 2, 3, 4 or 5. We've never had a more complex, but sometimes usually deploy a lot of resources to handle incidences that does not qualify to be type 1. Now, the purpose of the incident command system is to ensure the safety of responders and others, achievement of tactical objectives, and the effective use of resources. We've seen previously, whenever we are called upon to address or to respond to an incident, whenever there are no structures or concepts adopted by the responders, at many times, most of the responders are usually exposed to various risks when managing the incident. But within the structure of the incident command system itself incorporates the aspect of safety, because we have a role to be played by a safety officer. The incident will be managed by use of objectives, because of the objectives will allow various institutions to address the situation in totality, and also the ICS structure ensures efficient use of resources, because as an incident commander, as the person in charge of that incident, you will only be required to mobilize resources whenever they are required, but not just to mobilize without basically looking at the need or the gaps on the ground. So there are basic features of ICS, and I just read through them, but in the discussion I'll just go to the diagram to illustrate the specific functions of those who are given roles and responsibilities within the structure. So the features, one is common terminology, and when you talk about common terminology, is that this concept, if it is applied outside Kenya, maybe in Rwanda, because I understand they also use the same, or even in Uganda, the terminology are the same. An incident commander in that country managing an incident, in Kenya it is the same person. The roles are similar. So that is why the features recognizes the commonality in terms of terminologies. An incident commander referred to in that country here, just the same person is similar roles. Then modular organization. That modular organization of the chart itself, it is also similar. And it is standardized in a way that whenever you are addressing a complex incident, the structures will just be the same, expanding depending on the needs on the ground, from the incident commander and other general staffing functions that I'll discuss thereafter. Then there's the use of objectives to manage incidences. Then incident action plan is also a common feature, because you might find a situation where an incident requires more time to be addressed, or requires protracted operations. So the aspect of planning comes in. You need to sit down and craft or draw an incident action plan that is shared among those who are responding, the stakeholders, and it will guide on the objectives that are going to be achieved at each operational cycle within incident management. Then command organization, we have the command staff and we have the general staff. It's also a basic feature in ICS. Pre-designated incident facilities. There are incident facilities which are recognized within the concept and they are standardized. For example, When you are managing an incident, you need to have a command post, which will host the command staff, one of them being the incident commander. The other facilities which have been designed, such as the triage area. Before you do medical evacuation, you need to triage those who are injured, those who are affected by the incident, and other facilities like staging area, beds, helipad, etc. These are also common features in the incident management system or incident command system. Mobilization and resource management is also a key feature. There are standard guidelines on how the incident or the commander is required to mobilize these resources and to manage them. Then information and intelligence sharing is also within the concept. This information is usually shared within the actors when they are managing the incident, and also to the external stakeholders, the public, members of the public, and any other interested party who needs to know what is the status of what is happening when you are managing the incident. Then integrated communication. The teams that allocate, whether the command staff or the general staff, have to establish a communication linkage between them, which is usually integrated within the concept of ICS. You might be having a communication within SGRR, but SGRR members will be communicating themselves. But when you go to an incident, you have to adapt a format where any other responder will be able to communicate with you or other entity within the incident site. Then transfer of command is also a key feature. Whenever there is an incident and the communities are present, and support comes from the external intervention, maybe from the lowest decentralized level of government or any other entity that is coming to support the community, there is transfer of command. Remember, the community is being supported, so you have to transfer that command from the initial incident commander to the other level that is coming to support you. Then the vice versa will happen when the situation now is brought under control for you now to manage until maybe if investigation is required, you do the investigation before the incident is closed down. Then the aspect of accountability, and it is a similar format that applied to this room. Everyone was coming in, he or she was registering. So when you go to an incident, you have to account for those who are coming in to manage. You need to get their details, you need to understand what are they coming to do, what resources are they brought in, so that at the end of the day, you're able to account for the resources that were brought on board and who really participated in incident management. So go to the structure itself. Under program terminology number 1, there are position titles, and you will understand it better in the structure, but allow me to explain it using this line. We are having organization functions within ICS. One of them is the incident command, the command staff, the general staff, the branch, the group division, going down in the modular organization. So when you are initially, when there is an incident and a member of the public, of the community, or a government official is at the scene managing it, the organization function for that person who is in charge will be known as the incident commander. within the incident command, and any other roles that will be assigned to other teams according to the structure from the incident commander will be known as an officer. So, command staff has officers. The command has the commander. And these officers, for example, is the liaison officer, the safety officer, the public information officer. The general staff, which are not the command staff. And remember, as I mentioned earlier, the command staff are hosted in a command post, incident command post. And now the general staff are the people who are at the operational level supporting the function of the incident commander through objectives. So they are referred to as staff as chiefs. Chief of operations, chief of logistics, chief of planning, chief of finance and administration. There are only 5 functional areas under general staff, and it goes down to other levels depending on the complexity of the institution. On the facilities, those are the incident pre-designed facilities, sometimes are pre-designed. For example, within this area, if we have an emergency, there's an area allocated as an assembly area. I don't know, I haven't taken time to look around, but it may be existing in this facility. So, an assembly area or an assembly point is a pre-designed incident facility. Then we have the command post, which are usually designed whenever we are managing an incident, staging areas where resources report to, when they are checking in, bases, which can be an area where you can do your logistics issues. It can collocate the incident command post. Then we have camps, temporary or permanent camps, for people who have been relocated from their homes because of an emergency. Then heli bases or heli spots where helicopters can land, can be serviced, and finally air bases or airfields. Again, resource descriptions. We have tactical resources, we have support resources. And it's just a definition on the common terminology. When you talk about tactical resources, these are resources, for example, personnel and major items of equipment used in operation. Then support resources, any other resources required to support the incident, for example, food, communication, equipment, or supplies. And there is also a resource description in terms of the status. Not every resource that we request to come to the incident site can be used, or they come with the same status, meaning that you can deploy a resource, for example, an excavator. Then when it arrives at the scene, you realize that it is not the right type that you want. But you might require to address an objective of that excavator. So you need to classify it in a category, which is called resource description. For example, when you talk about a resource that is assigned, this is a resource that has checked into the incident and is currently working and supporting the operations. those resources that are available, they are resources that are checked into the incident and is ready for tactical assignment, but has not been assigned. Then out of service is a resource that has checked into the incident but is not ready for assignment because maybe it is the wrong type or it has some issues to be addressed before it is assigned. Then the typing of an incident which is described about either kind or type. Remember, when you are requesting for a resource, you have to give specifics. And as an incident commander, you need to know what you require. Don't just request for ambulance and you don't know the different types of ambulances and the capabilities that they have. Because we have a case in hand whereby a resource was called upon to support, but later on we realized that there are few equipment that were missing which would have supported life. So resources are described in kind or type. When you talk about kind, is what the resource is. For example, a fire engine or a bulldozer. That is the kind of resource. But then when you go beyond that and you type it, you can have a fire engine that has a capability of, for example, it can fight, it can suppress fire. At the same time, it carries emergency extinguishing equipment. It does a double function. Or in simple terms, when you're requesting for a resource, for example, a helicopter, you can be given a helicopter that has seats, but you require a helicopter that can do air evacuation of a patient. It needs to have a stretcher in it. So these are the same kind of resources, but different type. One with seats, and another one with a capacity to, a capability to do medical operation. So without wasting more time on the narrative of ICS, just allow me to take you to the structure so that you understand what I was talking about in the beginning. Now, we were talking about, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. We mentioned about common terminologies. Number two, which is a common feature, is the modular organization. So in the modular organization, this is the incident command system structure that has a top-down fashion. It develops from the man in charge. Then the other functions come in depending on the complexity of the incident. Small incidences will require an incident commander alone. It does not require you to go alone or to develop other functions. For example, of a liaison officer or a public information officer, because this incident is small and only few people can address it at the community level and it ends there. But if it graduates to another level, for example, 5 goes to 4, you need more resources to be activated. You'll have to establish a facility which is an incident command post. Right now we have the incident commander with the command staff. The command staff are safety officer, liaison officer, and public information officer. Then we have the other general staff, if it goes beyond the capability of the area you are to another level, maybe sub-county or the county level, you need to have, when applying incident command system concept, you need to have these other general staff position, general staffing position. So for the general staff, we have the operations section, planning section, logistics section, finance and administration. In the common terminologies, I mentioned that when now you are describing the staffing, at the general staff, you need to call that person chief operations, who is in charge of operations, chief planning, who is in charge of planning section, chief logistics, and the chief finance and administration. Most of our responses, activities, we've been activating maybe the operations section and the logistics. But these structures, when you are applying ICS, you need to see whether the incident, depending on the complexity, requires the old version of the organization to be activated, or maybe the command staff. But an incident must have a commander. That is the incident commander. The IC, when managing an incident, must be there. And the objectives will define whether you scale up or you scale down. So these are the responsibilities of the incident commander. He is the overall in charge of the incident, and he sets out the incident objectives, determines strategies, and also establishes the priorities for response. When you are there, when you are activated by your regional or any other person who has reported the incident to go and support, you need to establish where there is a commander there. If there is no one in charge, you take that position. And when you become the incident commander, these are the roles that you need to know. You are supposed to set the incident objectives, you need to determine the strategies, you need to establish priorities for response. And remember, this is the only position that is always staffed. When there is an incident, you must have the incident commander. And then the command staff can do, depending on the complexity of the incident, also the general staff. So the command staff, who are the safety, the liaison, and the public information officer, have those functions. For example, safety officer, they're the ones to carry out the responsibility of monitoring the safety conditions, practices, and procedures, ensuring that the responders are not exposed to risks and they are not injured. And if an injury occurs affecting the responders, then you need to have an appropriate measure to address that. Maybe a standby ambulance or any other support that can be given to ensure that a responder safety is safeguarded. Then liaison officer is the primary contact for supporting entities. There's somebody who will be, on behalf of the incident commander, will be communicating outside the incident, and will be the link person to other organizations that are coming to support the incident. Then public information officer provides information to stakeholders, specifically the media. The public needs to know what is happening. So through public information officer, that information can go out. But with the concept of the incident commander. Any questions? Is there any question? So for a complex incident, This is how it looks like. This is how it can look when you are addressing type 1 or type 2 incident, depending on the definition that was given there. So we will have a fully fledged command staff, the incident commander and his staffing. Then we will also have the general staffing function expounded downwards to support the complex incident. So I'll not dwell much on the other features, but I'd like you to note that when using objectives to manage an incident, the incident objectives specifically state what will be accomplished. For example, when you're managing an incident, automatically there are 3 priorities that you need to put in mind. One is saving lives. We are there to save lives. Whenever lives are threatened in an incident or an event. Then number 2 is incident stabilization. You are ensuring that the situation does not escalate to areas that are not affected, so you need to stabilize the situation. Then number 3, there is the aspect of property and the environment. So those are the 3 key priorities you have to put in mind whenever you are managing an incident. And the objectives that you come up with should be aligned to the priorities, the 3 priorities: saving lives, preservation of property, and also stabilization of the incident. Then you establish objectives, strategies, and tactics in that format. So I'll go to another concept, and this one will assist you to broaden your understanding in incident management. Now, next slide. This concept is about interoperability. It is known as joint emergency interoperability concept. We talked about the incident command. Incident command is a command and control concept. Interoperability supports command and control. When you have command and control, we also have the concept that brings on board interagency or interoperability among the actors whenever they are managing an incident. So, at the national level, this is the response scenario for the 2 tiers of government. We have the national government and the county government, and maybe the local authorities, sub-county. So at the national level, when you are defining the levels of response, we have actors at the national level. One of the actors is National Disaster Management Unit. But we have you as a community where as well you can intervene in any situation. But remember, some situations might not call for activation of the national institutions. So the figure you are seeing there, it is a declaration on emergencies or disaster response. It goes into levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. So, level 1, these are very small emergency situations or incidences that does not require maybe a county resource to be deployed. It might be a fire in a kitchen, somebody's house. So the owner of the house and the neighbors can address that if they have capabilities. So it falls under level 1. Level 2, or maybe it might escalate, but the resources within the county, sub-county, or the ward level can be activated and address that situation. Level 2, these are medium incidents, but are still localized emergencies. However, the county government sometimes has to deploy resources to manage and recover from the same. But level 3 is where now the national resources are supposed to be activated, because the county resources cannot manage, cannot respond and recover effectively, or they are overwhelmed. When I talk about national resources, it can be a regional level, maybe some adjacent counties coming to support the affected county government, and the national entities will be on the ground. Level 4, these are more complex emergency situations where the president has to declare the situation as a disaster so that we get external assistance. Next. Now, I've talked about the priorities of an incident management. Next. And I mentioned this joint working concept. There are 5 principles. And I just mentioned, however, there is a training that we had planned before the general elections, which will be coming again. And some of you will get an opportunity to attend it comprehensively. It's a half-day training on this concept. So these 5 principles address all those questions: what, who, when, where, why, and how. And the principle number 1 is collocation. Collocation means when you are called upon to respond, don't go there as a lone ranger. You need to appreciate the fact that the other people, maybe you have to find them making the same incident, from the government, from the private sector, from institution of disaster risk management. So you need to collocate. Collocate meaning you meet a safe and secure location. I talked about command post in the other concept, because this one supports command and control. So you need to collocate, identify the lead entities, their leaders, the in charge, that the DCC, the ACC, the OCS, those leaders within the local area. Meet with them. If there is no meeting taking place, or it has taken place, you need to ask if these leaders have already met, so that you understand the objective. What is the objective? What are the gaps that exist there? So, principle number 1 is collocate. Number 2, communicate. The aspect of communication has to be there. We should not go to an incident with a focus of getting a selfie, be the first person to disseminate this information that I was there, exposing yourself to various risks, just because you want to capture some video, some photos, forgetting that you are there to assist. So you need to communicate. Communication, link up with your other entities, link up with the source people, tell them what is on the ground, tell them what is happening and what needs to be brought on board to support the incident. Then this communication has to be aligned and understood You might be having a radio communication, but when you are synchronizing the same, just use simple language. Don't use codes, complex acronyms that any other person will not understand what you're talking about. Then coordination is very, very much required because you cannot work in isolation. There is on-site coordination, there is off-site coordination. So on-site coordination, there must be synchronization of actions with those who are on the ground. Not everyone doing everything everywhere within the incident site. Then jointly understanding the risk. How do we do that? There's an acronym. Before I go to that acronym, we need to jointly understand the risk by pointing out possible hazards. Then you share amongst yourselves. If it is a fire incident, what might follow? Somebody might be injured because of burns. Somebody might be affected because of falling objects from above. You are fighting fire within a building. You enter inside, forgetting that maybe the roof caught fire. So any item might fall from the roof. So you need to jointly understand the risks. Between the responders and those who are coming, you need to also give them that information. Then shared situation awareness as number 5. It is also a principle that you use the acronym MID-10. MID-10. You understand more about MID-10. Next. For you to collocate, we are being advised that you have to do that as soon as possible in a safe location and easily identifiable location. A command post is an ideal place for people to follow it. As an entity, as a group, you might meet yourself maybe 5 of you within an instance site. Identify a leader amongst yourself who can represent you in that communication site where the leaders are. Then you'll be given information on what is required of you in terms of support to the instance. Next. And then when you're collocating, you're told that respondents should identify and meet with who is in charge from each of the services. Identify and meet with whom is in charge from each of the services. For example, on the medical component, we realize that we have emergency medical services, the ambulance service. Try to find out who is in charge of that ambulance, in charge of the team, what are they brought on board. If it is the police, try to identify who is in charge within that team. If it's the fire services, don't just look at the engine, the fire engine. Try to identify, they're usually in charge of the team, whom you can work together. Because I'm not audible. Can you hear me?
Check. 1.
I'm using another sound. So, I was trying to explain the aspect of collocation, and I think we all understand. We only need to meet with the leaders from each of other services, and those leaders usually meet and collocate. You can go at a command post. If there is no command post, advise the teams that were there before you to establish one, because this is the point where you can meet as leaders, look at the situation, discuss what the gaps are, come up with objectives, like what you've seen in the command and control. Next. The concept, that is the ICS. So communication, for you to communicate clearly using plain English language, use common agreed language, common terminology, map symbols. Avoid ambiguity by providing factual information. Provide factual information. You need to verify the information you get before you share. You have to be giving facts. Then using the common model for passing incident information between services and their control rooms, with them. So in communication, you can as well apply the MITEM acronym, we can talk about it. So you can as well use the MITEM acronym in communication as well as the shared situation awareness. Next. Coordinate. On that slide, you're seeing there's a single person, there's so many people behind, there's a single resource, there are other resources behind this single person. There is need of coordination. Coordination is very important because if there is no leader, first of all, you need to agree when you collocate. Yes, we are here to support the incident, but nobody wants to take responsibility. Then you agree according to the hazard that is presenting itself. Who has more knowledge of it that can become the leader initially, so that when other entities comes in with specialized people, they'll be able to transfer command. Identify priorities, resources, and abilities for effective response, then including timing of further meetings. So the lead agency should chair coordinating meetings and make sure they take place regularly. You can have a lead person from the teams, or you can have a lead entity. For example, when us go to the scene, at level 3, we usually take the command and control roles. Then we coordinate other teams that come in. But normally, we usually appreciate those who are on the ground because there are some leadership. Before we support them, we need also to get information. So that is all about coordination. Next. Jointly understanding the risks by sharing information about the likelihood and potential impact of threats and hazards to agree potential control measures. Each and every responder needs to understand what are the risks, what are the risk factors when we go to support victims in a building collapse, in a fire incident, in a road traffic accident. So what are these risks and what are the measures that can be put in place to mitigate? Next. The acronym MITEM, next, is used in situation awareness. And this will help you match in terms of communication again. You use it in situation awareness, you use it in communication. For example, the word M means major incident. And a major incident is defined below the slide. When you talk about major incident in Kenya, this is an event or situation with a range of serious consequences which requires special arrangements to be implemented by one or more emergency responder entities. So if the situation is not a major incident, you concentrate on ETHANE event, where you need to report on the exact location. Now when you are doing situation, when you are doing communication, communicate what is the exact location of the incident. What is the exact location? You can even send a pin to those who are in WhatsApp to give the correct position of where you are or where the incident is. Then, what is the type of the incident? The type? What are the hazards? H. What are the hazards? Or potential hazards that can be identified? What is the access point? How can people easily access the area you are referring to? It might be a big incident or complex in nature, but you're giving people information to go there without giving proper direction on access. Maybe you're on the ground. Tell people you're going to access from the east because the normal access route has been compromised. It is blocked. You will not be able to access. So access in and out. Then the number of casualties. How many people are injured? How many people are affected? Need to be clear on that. And finally, the emergency services. Which and how many emergency responder assets and personnel are required or are already on the scene? Who are there on the scene? How many do we require if it is necessary? So that the information becomes complete. If you send a scanty information and you're supposed to be supported by other entities, they will struggle much, wasting time to gain other information, maybe from you as an individual or other people. Next. So, thank you for listening. Those are the two concepts that I want to talk about: incident command system and the principles of joint working. What I want you to know, and actually in this country, we've adopted these concepts. We manage incidences by objective. Whenever we find us within an incident, we usually apply the concept of ICS, which is a command and control concept. And nowadays, we also incorporate the joint working concept, which supports the incident command. There's leadership, there's command, and also there's an aspect of joint working through the 5 principles of one I talk about is collocating, communicating, coordinating, jointly understanding the risks, and shared situation awareness. Lastly, before my colleague comes in, let me just show you an incident there. We are talking about the pre-designed incident facilities in the incident command system. This is a model of an incident. The patch in red is the impact site. Whether it's the fire scene or it is an explosion site or it is a building collapse or any other kind of an incident. Now, when you approach that incident, you are supposed to establish the cordon. If there is no cordon, you're supposed to establish the cordon here. There is the inner cordon and outer cordon. What you are seeing in the inner yellow is the inner cordon. What you are seeing in the outer yellow is the outer cordon. In the inner cordon, we have the incident itself, but we have the incident facilities, like the location of the general staff that is according to the incident command system, the chief of operations. He or she operates closely to the hot zone, the red area, with the tactical teams. The tactical teams are now in touch with the red area. which is the red zone. The yellow zone, which is the bomb zone, has General Staff, specifically Chief of Operations. Then, outside the inner corridor, we are having other incident facilities, and you can identify where the incident command post is located. Touching the outer cordon, you have the staging area where it's located, and from the chart, you can see the staging area is on the way to the exit. We are not supposed to block the entry. We are staging resources closer to the exit because we don't want to block the entry where resources are coming in. So somebody comes in with a resource and equipment, it has to go in an area where it can be released faster instead of blocking the entrance or the access. Then we have the triage area, which is next to an area where we have the ambulances parking. Thank you very much for listening. I invite my colleague to just give a brief on two hazards, structural failures, and fires. Then we go to the next sessions of do and don'ts before we wrap up. Thank you. Any question? Any burning question? Because we have a question and answer session. Any sword? Question?
Okay, one I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'm new to this, I don't know, but the volunteer group, say there's an incident and a volunteer goes to the incident. Do the national agency knows that there is a volunteer group?
The national agency, we know. Because we here with the national agency.
Not NDMU.
Yes.
But for example, let's say there is the commander of the incident is the OCS of that particular station.
Yes.
Do the OCSs know that there is an NDMU volunteer group?
There are some in Nairobi, there are some who knows. If you go to Busia, they don't know. Even some of them don't know whether it exists. But we come in when they have a problem and we support them. The issue is that most of our functions is at the national. And the disaster management the function is a concurrent function. The national government and the county government. They all have this function. But why we are incorporating you and the community is because there is a gap. The counties, they don't have, even here in Nairobi, go to the ward level, you hear that there are disaster management committees, but sometimes they are not active. There are committees in boardrooms. But when you go to the community, it is the community. And we understand that whenever there is an emergency, it impacts the community. So the community has that, the initial capabilities. One to identify, one to do the initial actions. The OCS is within the community. If you meet in an incident and he or she doesn't recognize you, you are supposed to identify yourself. tell him, so and so, this is my application, what can I do for you? Because they are the decentralized established networks of government. They cannot deny you access because you already identify yourself. It is now you to establish that contact even before an incident occurs. Because that is what we are encouraging organizations within the community level. We don't wait for an incident to happen. Then, when you are trying to do the collocation, the joint working concept, is when now you're trying to understand each other. You didn't plan for this, it has happened. Now, it will take you a long time to address that situation because we didn't have prior plans, but that is a good question. Most of them, they don't know. Nairobi maybe some. Outside Nairobi, we're trying to establish coordinators within police. But the challenge again, these are civil servants. Tomorrow they are transferred to another area. We have a gap. But if we have members of the community where they live, that is their permanent place, they will never be transferred. They are within the community. And if you brought another person, leave alone that one who doesn't know you. Another one will come, who totally doesn't know you. Now we start again. So it is good to be active in all phases, like the director has told us. We don't wait to export. When you are mitigating, is when now we can have those forums. Maybe within the security, SB around, they have good touch with the local police. Then introduce them, tell them we also are affiliated with the National Disaster Management. This is what we do, and we need to have that structure strengthened. We need to have even officers having that knowledge of how we can hold whenever we are supporting police. I think
It's important. It's important for everybody to understand.
exactly.
You just not pick up and then you don't know what to do.
Yes, and that is there. Not everyone even knows. In most cases, there's an instance when you are newly established, we realized that most emergencies were being addressed in Kenya Force. And anything happens, people will call Kenya Red Cross because they have visibility. But in the real sense, we have entities in government which have key roles similar to the Kenya Red Cross. The Kenya Red Cross can support victims to a hospital, but they don't own hospitals. We have medical professionals, but medical professionals are not supposed to be waiting for patients alone. They need also to be proactive in one way or another. So it is an area that we are trying to address, to have community also brought up in supporting mitigation of this.
But I think that is where there was a gap before. But now what the government is trying to do is to get the volunteers involved with the communities themselves so that everybody knows, yes, there is a disaster management plan.
Sure. Any other question? One question? General question? Yes. We move on. Okay. We move on to building collapse.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shamala. My name is Edwin Kakoli. I come from the National Disaster Management Unit. I am a disaster risk reduction officer under Mr. Shamala. I am glad to be before you this particular evening, and I will share with you some common hazards, mainly two of them, building collapse and fire. As volunteers, you realize that you'll be meeting mostly these two items. You'll be meeting these two items in one way or the other. And it's advisable that at least you have some basic skills on how you can react when they do happen. And those skills, the basic skills, will help you to save life, to save property, and even the environment. So as volunteers of NGNU and the community at large, you will play a very crucial role if you have those basic skills. And we are going to share those basic skills this particular evening. So I'm going to start with the building collapse. You all know some of the causes of building collapse. And building collapse is referred as the failure of a structure or component to maintain its structural integrity. You realize that in one way or the other, a building will come down, a bridge will come down, something will come down because of maybe failure of maybe not having an engineer using fake materials. Those are some things that will come up. Or maybe somebody has gotten money and has decided to build a solid building and not using the required materials and engineers. Finally, you find that that particular building will come down. And there are several reasons as why a building will come down, whether by nature or by default. If the building comes down, it means there will be loss of property, loss of life, and so many things. Now, we now have in as emergency responders. What are we supposed to do? First, when a building comes down, you are required to recognize the reason as why that building has come down. Because you come and maybe you'll be getting into a danger. You have to realize, recognize first, this building has come down. What is the reason of it coming down? Was it under construction? Was the construction over? You need first to get the reason as why that particular building has come down. That will assist you to conduct a proper search and rescue. So after recognizing the reason, you now identify the resources that need to rescue the people who are in or not. Those affected. You need to realize that this building has come down. What resources do we need? We need a bulldozer. We need people. We need engineers. So when you recognize that those are the resources you require, you now initiate how to get them. Call maybe the engineers, call maybe the public works, call the NGNU, call Red Cross. You are now initiating the response. After initiating the response, now take control of the incident. Take control of the incident by maybe having a cordon so that those people who are inside the cordon, they are the people who conduct search and rescue. Realize in Kenya, when an incident happens, people run towards the incident. And most of those people maybe, they are not going to rescue, but they are going to do it, to steal. So what you do is, you have a cordon, you insert a cordon, or a scene management cordon. And by doing so, you also have to realize that, you have to recognize that there might be hazards. Those hazards might be harmful to you and those people who are coming to rescue. So you need to identify what hazards are there. Maybe a building has come down, the hazards are there that maybe we have got materials, wires, we have maybe some chemicals. You need to recognize which hazards are there. Or you also need to realize that maybe the building has come down and there's a hole there. So after recognizing those hazards, it will help you now to apply a proper way of what? Doing search and rescue. Right together? Yes. Now, another crucial thing is you need to identify the pattern of which the building has come down. If you identify the pattern that the building has come down, it will also help you how to conduct a search and rescue. Take for example, we have got about 5 patterns of building collapse. We have that of letter A, we have that of letter B, we have that of leaning, we have that of pancake. If you recognize those patterns, it will help you to know how do I conduct such a rescue. Take for example, pancake. Pancake is where the building comes down in a kama cake. In such a way, if someone is inside there, you cannot pull that particular person. You will be injuring that particular person or you will be killing that particular person. So what is the proper way? Machinas can come, it is the debris that is up, it is cut. It's cut, then remove, then a person is removed. If not that way, we have, we can you realize that we have got those, that of pressure.
Yeah.
You have a pressure, you want, then you remove. So, recognizing the pattern of the building collapse, we will also help you to identify what method you use to rescue that particular person. Are you together? Yes. Now, as you do that, you also need to realize that we have secondary items that, or potential hazards that can happen. Maybe the building has come down and you've rushed in, and maybe one pillar was still supporting. So as you rush in, you're causing what? Some disturbance. Then it comes down. As you go and as you rush to assist to do such a rescue, realize that there can be a secondary device or a potential device that can cause a secondary collapse. Also, you need to be very keen, conduct a visual check, check, verbal searches of of just general checkup. Maybe like in a building like this one, if you are used to this building like this one, you also need to realize that there's maybe a map somewhere telling you that there is a route here, there is this exit here, entry here. You also need to have such knowledge so that it will help you when you conduct such a rescue. You know that people might be at a particular place because you already have the map, or you have the visual search that will be done that has told you that maybe here is where people are, here is the kitchen, and as you conduct such a rescue, you start from known to unknown. Because when you start from a known place, you create and you see where you're going. But when you start from a known place, you find yourself falling into a big routine. So it's proper that you start from the known, make sure that you are safe as you go to rescue others. But you have to be safe first before you save the other person. So you start from the known to unknown. Next. Okay. Great. As you conduct such a rescue, you also need to realize to identify safe zones. You also need to identify safe zones in that you don't move from fire, from frying pan to fire. You identify a safe place. The last slide showed you how cordon, isn't it? That cordon has already identified that this is a safe place that you can rescue people and take them there. Then they are located to a proper place. This the last one I've already talked about it, the plan. We have the plan that will tell you that this is a kitchen, this is a dining hall, this is where people maybe a study room. So that plan will help you to know how to conduct that particular search and rescue. These are some of the patterns of building collapse. I don't know. I've said there are about 5, isn't it? I don't know if you can be able to memorize them. Huh? What is this? Pancake, isn't it? Good. How about this? V. Good. How about this? A. How about this? Leaning. Now, when you look at these patterns, you realize that when you're conducting such a rescue, I've talked about this, isn't it? I've talked about this. Like letter B, hiyo nyumba inaingia ndani. Hiyo inaingia ndani. So it becomes letter B. So when doing that, you realize that maybe word huko mwisho na huko it's strong. So you start from where it's strong, go to the weaker. But when you start from the weaker, that means you're pulling everything towards it. That's why we say you start from the no to unknown, making sure that you are safe as you conduct the certain. Then another thing, like the leading one, is very dangerous. You start from where it's safe, because when you start from where it's leading, it means you'll be a victim. That's why it's important for you to identify these patterns when you are called upon to conduct search and rescue, when you are responding. Are you together up to there? Next. Now, these are some of the actions that you need to do whenever you are in a building or in a place. You need to be aware of what is likely to happen. You need to be on the lookout for remaining collapses. For example, when you are in a building and you realize that it has a crack, and you realize that this crack is developing, maybe it was so small, then you realize that you can even place your finger inside. That is an embedding danger. It shows that it's what? The gap is widening. Another thing is, maybe you are in a solid building, you realize that this window it cannot be able to close up, or even this door is not able to close up. That's an indicator to tell you that there's something happening in that particular building. So you need to be on a watch out, and if you see such signs, you need to report to the concerned people that there's a danger here, and you think an action that can be taken so that you save the people who are there. Then you can also advise, maybe you hear the same thing and people are living in such a place, you advise that they come out of such places, and especially maybe if the building is condemned, people should come out. As I said also, you need to also be able to, when you go anywhere, just get a glimpse of the layout of that building. In most cases, the layout is always placed around the entry. It will tell you that this is an entry. There's a map there that will tell you the information about that particular building. So that when you go in and there's an alarm telling you that there's fire, you already have the knowledge that the exit is at a particular place, or the emergency exit is at a particular place. It's also good to identify the emergency exits. If you are working in a place, maybe in your office, which is in the storage building, in most cases, when an alarm comes out that there is fire or the building is coming down, people tend to rush out and then go back again, because you realize that I have forgotten my phone, I've forgotten my wallet, I've forgotten my that thing that is so crucial to you. You tend to go back. It's advisable that you just have an emergency bag with you. When there's an alarm, place your thing there, walk out. And when you walk out, you go to a designated place. When there's an alarm about unsafe building, please give that information so that you save people. Because we realize that in our Kenyan culture, people are used to saying, this thing has been here ever since and we are always there. So they tend to be sluggish to take action. If there's a warning, please assist by making people aware that actually there's danger and they need to get out. Then we are business people, we live in storage buildings. Let us solve this issue of overloading, because overloading also helps in bring buildings down, because sometimes the building is constructed badly. cannot hold certain load. So it's also advisable that when you're in such building, you give information that no, this building maybe cannot hold this weight. In most cases, like right now, what happens? There is this big signpost. Huh? These big signposts being placed in some buildings, advertisements. You hear that they also bring the buildings down. Because that weight was not catered for when constructing that particular building. So such things need to be looked at. Next. These are just some of the actions that you can take when you are moving in a new environment. Do proper survey before deciding to settle in a particular place. Check whether the building has an occupation certificate. Make sure that if you are constructing, make sure that proper construction takes place. And when you are in such a building and maybe you've been told it's coming down, walk fast, get away from the building. Inform others. Inform others by telling them maybe we've got some people who are disabled, maybe who are sick, they are pregnant mothers. Inform them as you walk out. Then this is something maybe also everybody can have an opinion about it, but maybe you are in a building and it has collapsed and you are saying that you are breathing. If there's a pillar next to you, please move to that particular pillar because automatically there will be a space there. If you move away from the pillar, you will get those other rubbles. So it's advisable that when you are in a building that has collapsed and you feel that there's something you can move, then move near the pillar because pillars are strong. Next. Yes, when a building has come down, please, if you're putting something, don't go back. Don't go back because in most cases those people who have gone back, they never get out. So get out from the building, go to an assembly point. You go to why people to the assembly point, we will have that next. So as our partners, you can find yourself in two situations. Either you are inside or you are outside. When something, maybe, for example, a building collapse, maybe you may be inside or you may be out. So you need to know how to act if you are inside and you are still alive, and or you are outside and you are alive. Okay. This one is risky. Come to Madam Victoria. So, those are the examples. This is the example of some of the buildings that are collapsed there. We realize that these are workers and they don't have safety items, PPEs. Next. That was contact. This was Rongai. Next. Now, these are some items that they are using to test the strength of the building that collapsed in the room. Next. So you can also see some floods that you can be exposed to. You need to identify it. For example, like building those days are safe. Yeah? They are also exposed to danger, isn't it? Those are some of the things that you need. And also realize that they are respondents. Those are from NYS. They don't have the PPEs. Yeah? So it's advisable that also as you go to rescue, and you can have PPEs, please use them. Next. That is a bulldozer. It is a resource that was initiated and it was brought. Now you realize that those are respondents. Some of them are also services. Next. You can also have floods. This was narrow. This is the Huduma. This is the river, isn't it? You can imagine it was built next to the river. This one. This buildings are brought down. You can hear these NAV officers. Next. Now, when you are inside the building, and you've been told that there is a crack, please stop what you're doing, then safely walk out. If you are having a computer, shut it down, put off the lights, and walk out. Huh? Now that the essentials have a emergency bag, then get to the safe place. Do not waste time. Next. Now, this is very important because it can be used especially when there is fire. I'm going to deal with this fire just next. But this is very important because in most cases fire starts when they are small. Then they grow, they become something big. The initial action can determine whether that fire will be put off or it will explode. Now, when this, for example, there's a fire or we know that there's a crack, please, and you're in a building, please do not use elevators, lifts. Don't use them because you can get inside them, no? Warm. Huh? Then use the stairways that are near. And if you already know the layout of the building, use the emergency exits. Help those who are needy. Don't leave them there. Some of us just rush, when you ask now, they are like, oh, my friend is inside. You want to go back again. Assist those who need your help. In case it's fire, and maybe you are going to use this particular door, and you touch the handle, you realize that handle is hot. Please, don't open that particular door. It means the other side, there is fire. So when you open, it's like you have opened for oxygen, and that fire will come towards you. So when you are getting away from a danger zone, and you realize that because it's fire, the door is hot, please don't open that particular door. Use another exit. And as we go out, please nowadays when they do the buildings, the emergency doors are supposed to open outward, isn't it? But others do not open outward. That's why people die at the door, because that particular strategy. You can imagine, you people who know that the doors are supposed to open outward, you are pushing out, and these people, the others are pulling inside. So people die at the door. Imagine they have escaped from the danger zone, they die at the door because there are just some small basic skills that maybe they are not doing before. Next. Now, as you move out from that particular danger zone, you go to an assembly point. Why you go to the assembly point? Because there's accountability purposes so that they know who are outside and who are inside. So that when the rescue team comes, they can be able to go and search for those who are inside. And also it's good that the Kenyan scenario is very funny. I remember a scenario somewhere just within Nairobi. There was a fire, and apparently somebody, she was a lady, she took her bag, placed in her bag, went home. So, when the fire department came, who were there, were informed that so and so is still inside. So, we started searching for the person. We realized that she was not there. So, when the message was circulated, somebody decided to call her phone, and she responded. And by responding, she said, me, I'm already at home taking tea. So we were surprised. We had missed almost 2 hours to search for the lady. But not knowing she had already gone home, she was taking tea. So it's advisable that when you in such a scenario, please go to the fire assembly point so that protocol or accountability is done so that they know that everybody is there, and whoever is not there, then the search and rescue team should go and conduct the search. It's also advisable, all of you need to know emergency numbers so that you can be able to initiate a response if whenever it's required. Yes. At the assessment point, conducted research, and they realized that the building is safe, you'll be told to go back. If not, if it's not safe, you'll be told maybe to go home, or maybe to provide this assistance and this assistance. You may ask, where is the fire assembly point on this particular place? You already know. Huh? That's nice. Next. Now, that was about building collapse. I want to touch briefly about fire, because it's something that is common. Are we in agreement? Yes, I want to touch something briefly about fire. Fire, we interact with fire in our daily basis. But for fire to occur, it has to have 3 elements. You have to have oxygen, you have to have heat, and you have to have fuel. When you have those 3 elements, you have fire. Now, as volunteers, you are also first responders. And you also need to know that to be able to put out a small fire that has happened, then you have to remove one of the elements. Because for fire to happen, it has to have 3 elements: fuel, heat, and
Oxygen.
oxygen. Fuel, heat, and oxygen. For you to be able to put out that any small fire, you have to remove one of the elements. If it's heat, then you can use water for because it's maybe fuel, gas, put out the gas. So that's something just that you know that at least you have to remove one of the elements to be able to put out that particular fire. Next. Now, you may be in a state whereby you are supposed to rescue somebody who is on fire. Maybe, for example, she was cooking. Most places maybe. Let me give this example. Somebody is cooking mandazi, and for you to cook mandazi, you have to have a frying pan, you have to have oil and fire, isn't it? Yeah. Then when the dough is made, the second and the dough is inside the oil. So when the oil comes down, it means you have to add another oil inside the frying pan. So by bad luck, when instead of adding oil, you add water. What will happen? This is the explosion of fire. Isn't it? Now, get yourself in that particular scenario. How do you act in that particular scenario? How do you act in that particular scenario? That the first action you take will determine whether you save life, whether you save property, or whether you save the environment. So some of the basic things that we need to know is you can be able to save that situation by one, maybe if you have something called fire blankets. A fire blanket, you can use a fire blanket or you can improvise a fire blanket by doing what? Putting all that fire. What do? Take a fire blanket, open it, cover on top of that frying pan. By doing so, you have denied that particular fire altitude. The home is suffocate. If you don't have a fire blanket, you can improvise. Take a strong blanket that's deep inside the water, then cover it. You can also maybe use sand. Yeah? And also use, so those are some of the basic things you need to know. Now, by bad luck, you are not able to do what I've told you, and the fire has now gotten into your clothes. Yeah? The fire has gotten into your clothes. You are now burning. Or your friend is burning. What are you supposed to do? Do you run out? Huh? It's a principle that you dash down and roll. When you dash down and roll, that is the simplest way to put off that particular fire. So when you find yourself that somebody has gotten into the fire and you are there to assist, don't tell him to run, because when he runs, you'll be finding that particular fire. Otherwise, dash down and roll. Next. We talked about not using elevators. Maybe not overloading maybe electricity. When you are using, you are saying a place maybe most people are using electric appliances, which not produce electricity because that can cause fire. Then next. Now, here is another crucial point here. I remember sometimes back we used to have fire at Kijijini, here in Langana. I remember one time there was fire and somebody passed and saw a fire extinguisher there. He took the fire, threw it into the fire. And he thought that it was helping. Yeah, it was in Langana. Have you ever heard of this story? So you hear that as we are seated here, we have got about 4 fire extinguishers. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many of us know how to do fire extinguishers? Maybe if you allow me, by show of hands, how many of us know how to do fire extinguishers? Okay. Now, I've asked that because it's very important for you to recognize a particular kind of fire that is about to be used for a particular kind of fire extinguisher. Take for example, we have a fire extinguisher that uses water. I use a fire extinguisher with water to put off fire that comes from electricity. My point is, we need to know what kind of fire extinguisher to use on what kind of fire extinguisher to use on what type of fire. And for that, I know you also have mobile phones. Please Google and read about the classes of fire. That will tell you the right kind of fire extinguisher, what type of fire. I will get up there. Thank you. Next. 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 Now, as I said before, it's good to know the plan of a building when you get in, so that it becomes easier for you to act whenever there is a hazard that has taken place. And when you realize that there is a hazard that has occurred, please inform those who are close to you. And this is the house that was on fire. And let's go to the next. Back again. This building was on fire. People managed to escape through the windows. Now you realize that there is a lot of smoke up here. And down here, we have no smoke. There's a lesson to be learned there. One, when you are in a building that has fire, for you to be able to escape, or for you to be able to save people, you need to crawl. Because up here, the air is suffocated. The oxygen is contaminated. But down here, it is still fresh. So you are supposed to do what? You crawl as you walk away from that particular incident. But if you think that you will walk, by the time you get to the door, the energy inside you will be out. The lungs will not be having some oxygen inside. So it's advisable that when you find yourself in such a situation, please crawl, because down here you have fresh air, oxygen is, you can breathe well, but up here it is contaminated. So it's advisable that even if you want to save somebody and you can see him and you can talk to him, let the people crawl as they come to safer places. Are you together? Yeah. Now, there's that picture. This picture here, when I see this picture, I laugh because when there's an alarm requiring people to get out of a building, someone says that a safer place for me is in the ocean. This person here was from fire department. People had gone into the ocean. He's going to take the rescue them from the ocean. It's advisable that you move from the danger. By moving from the danger, you don't go to the ocean, you go away from what has occurred. If it's a building, get outside the building, not inside the building. Unless you find out that maybe you cannot get out, that's when you can maybe get yourself a place. This is the bill that is supposed to be double. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. It's okay. There are some items also need to know that you can use to extinguish fire. Some of them are the fire extinguishers, of which I've already given you some assignment to read on the classification of fire, so that you can be able to identify like foam, what is foam used to extinguish, dry powder, what is it used to extinguish, water, Even now that nowadays we could wet chemicals, we need to read about that so that we get information. These are some of the things that are used to fight fires. We have fire extinguisher, we have fire extinguishing board, we have fire blankets, sand, container in water, sprinklers, fire engine. Those are some of the items that you can initiate to get in case you realize that there's fire at a particular place. Next. That's a fire road. Next. I think I've given we talked about that. Next. No. Next. Now, let me talk about this. After you read about the classification of fire and the type of fire that each fire extinguisher is supposed to extinguish, you need to know how to use that particular fire extinguisher. That is very important. That is very important. And there's this acronym called IPAS. An acronym called IPAS. If you have that name of IPAS, it will give you a procedure on how to use that fire extinguisher. The first I stands for identification of the right type of fire extinguisher, the right type of fire. You get the point? Then, after identifying the right, maybe for example, it is wood. So we have identified that the right kind of fire extinguisher to use is water. We get all of the fire extinguisher that is water. And mark you, those fire extinguishers have labels. So those labels also assist to identify which type of fire extinguisher. Now that of water has white label in color. Get all of that fire extinguisher as a white label in color. Then letter P stands for P. You remove the pin. See? I can demonstrate using this if you don't mind. So this is the fire extinguisher, this is dry powder. But there's no one giving, we are assuming this is water, isn't it? So the pin is here. This is the pin. And what do you do? After identifying, you get all of this fire extinguisher. Then you remove the pin. That is letter P. Then you go to letter A. Letter A. Get all, after removing the pin, get all of this fire extinguisher. Get all of this nozzle. Then aim at the base of the fire. Not on top, at the base of the fire. Then you go to letter S. Now squeeze this trigger so that this content that is inside goes towards the base of the fire. And the last S you sweep at that particular fire. That is very important because it will help you to be able to respond to that small fire before it becomes a big one. Are you together there?
Yeah. Let me interject a bit. We are stressing on this issue of fire because of just like 1 month, 1.5 months before we had serious fires in 2 facilities within the same week. One was Licorio, Silpak, another one was Platinum. And some of you were involved in responding to those fires. The lessons learned is that all these fires started small. And these are big facilities. They are godowns. The other one, all of them are godowns and they had factories inside to process polythene and paper material. These are easily combustible materials. But if you try to measure the kind of resources that were mobilized and the cost, it is very much expensive to respond. Where initial actions of the facility management and the occupants or the workers at that facility. They are just simply required to use a fire extinguisher to address that small fire before it became unmanageable by the facility. Myself, I spent 2 nights. Within 1 week, I think I didn't sleep for about 3 days because of the reaction to those facilities. And we tend to wonder, what is our level of preparedness? Do we wait for fires to happen so that we can respond? Or we need to put measures or interventions before, when it happens, it can escalate and bring a huge cost of damage to us. So that is why we are trying to emphasize. And it is us now within the community, we have that opportunity to reach out to these people. The owners of those facilities, tell them, invest in these simple gadgets, educate your people. Let them know IPAS. What is IPAS? I don't need to read the whole information in the extinction. I just need to know an acronym, IPAS. I need to identify the right extinguisher to fight the right kind of fire in its initial stages. So that you're not called upon as a volunteer in the middle of the night that a factory is on fire, you need to respond there, then you go there, the situation is out of hand. You can't even manage the resources of the family. It burns day in, day out. There are some fires when I'm being called to respond to, I rather go there and I ensure it does not catch other areas, but burn the material that is there completely. Because however much you request for resources, you just be using a lot of them. It will be expensive. You cannot achieve. So let us just take the knowledge that is being given seriously, so that we can be able also to escalate to our people on the ground for them to take this matter seriously. There are fires in the road day in, day out. But they happen when they are small. These are controlled fires, unless they are deliberate. But when they happen and we are there as community members, within facilities, let us just take that simple initiative to understand these equipments. They are not expensive. A fire extinguisher can last only 1 minute, 60 seconds. If it is open, only 1 minute. So how many will you have to address a fire that has reached the roof of a building? So you need to invest in the equipment and even in the knowledge of your people, so that we address these fires in the initial stages without waiting for it to grow. Then we can't manage, then we lose a lot of property and sometimes life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shahar. That's very important. We realize that in OSHA, it's mandatory that people have to comply with OSHA Act, whereby you have to have an emergency drill maybe once a year. Now, most people do what? They put all those measures in place, like here, the fire extinguishers, maybe you could even the fire detectors, but they forget one element: the training of the occupants of that particular place. Because if you train the people who are there, they can be able to use those resources that are there to save life. But now, having both the items, the resources, the equipment, but not investing also in training the people, you have like done nothing. Because if there's that small fire that has happened, they're not be able to use the equipment that are there. So it's advisable that this knowledge is shared, and if we are all aware of what we're supposed to do, then it becomes easy for us to save lives and property. Next. That is a fire blanket. I believe you all know fire blanket, and I've also demonstrated how you can use a fire blanket. Next. That's fire blankets. The sun, next. Water, next. These are just some of the ways that you can use to fight fire. Next. These are fine. I think stop there. And if there's some questions, I'm here.
Any question? Anybody question? Now we are in the question and answer session. The session was holding for common hazards, and he was able to touch on do's and don'ts. In structural failures, we were able to be given examples on how structures fail, specifically buildings. We did have an opportunity to expand more on other bridges, but building collapses has been common in Nairobi County, Kiambu County, and I don't know where next, but the recent past we had frequency in those two counties. They've been called upon to respond. So we need to have this basic information. Even Nairobi within the areas that West Africa, we've had some situations. And developers are continuing to construct. You can't stop them. We have entities which are responsible. But some say they don't have capacity. But we are within the community. But the people who are heavily impacted, or you are the first one. So if we are the first one in the community, we need to have this information. We need to share this information also to others. Even by observing those simple signs of structural failure, we need to report for the relevant entities to come on board. Like, for example, the building that collapsed recently in Embakasi. The in-charge police post was going to check out an unusual activity where the owner of the facility, which was adjacent, and it was the owner of the plot that caused the collapse, was dumping soil along the road. So when we went to inquire, and they went to where the soil was being excavated from, they didn't even last for 10 minutes. That building came down. Because this person was here with the foundation of the other. And even when you see the way it collapsed, it went sliding towards where what the excavated area, showing that the cause was the effect on the foundation. And these are police officers. By luck, he was not injured, but he witnessed what had happened. We lost 5 lives from that incident. And we don't know how many lives will occur. So when you are responding, I know now some of us have gotten some ideas on what we need to observe, on what we need to advise those who are supporting the victims. Because initially, the initial response in most cases does not have the experts. It is the community. Those with knowledge, those without knowledge, those who are taking advantage of the opportunity, they are taking advantage of the situation. Maybe to steal items. Those with goodwill, they need to help, but you don't know. So we need to ensure that we have this knowledge, we share it, and we apply it. So that whenever we're having a situation, we also mind something. Any question?
I think the funny thing it has the other presentation on fatal crashes.
Yes.
That would be very interesting as well.
Fatal crashes. How to manage?
How to manage, because a lot of people up here, when they're out on the road and they see an accident, they should have knowledge of what to do.
Yeah, what to do simply. How many have studied fasting? The actions, the scene of emergency, all that stuff, right? Very few. Most of us. I interacted with you. I know the knowledge gap. I know. I interviewed most of you. So you need to have a chance to be trained on fasting. It is usually an annual thing. If if you are trained long time ago, I know it will see there. So you need to refresh your mind. Buy a first aid manual. There are different editions that are out there. You can go to St. John Ambulance. These manuals are sold for about 3,000 or 2,500. Latest edition. It has all the information. How to deal with a fracture, how to deal with bleeding. People who are involved in crashes, they bleed, they get fractured, they get punctured injuries in the major organs, they get shock, yes, the common question. But you need to assess first. You need to assess, and you need to be qualified there. If you don't have that knowledge to assist somebody who is struggling, therefore, just make the area safe so that any other person cannot get injured or exposed to that injury. Then all the necessary or call the emergency service providers. Just try to follow that area, put warning signs, the hazard signages, warn the other oncoming motorists, so that you make that area safe for the other road users before the health crisis. But if you are a qualified first aider, you need to act. Always have a trauma kit, always have some gloves with you, first aid kit, whichever side that you can mobile in your car. And then if you're not sure of what you're supposed to do, you can always consult online. Google how to address a wound. You get so many solutions on how to address a wound, on how to control bleeding, direct pressure, and many others. But you cannot train you on first aid today. We'll try and again take a little bit from our time, or you commit yourself for 10 lessons of self-control. Within a week, you have a certificate. And you
Yes, I have something. When there's an apart accident, again, the initial action that is taken matters a lot. Because we realize that when an accident happens, everybody runs to help. We find that maybe people are trapped in a vehicle, this one is pulling this way, this one is pulling that way, and finally, someone will be having even a spinal injury, and you end up killing that particular person. So what are you supposed to do? Because at least you have some knowledge to take control of the situation. Please stop. What knowledge about first aid? Who is a medic here? Who is a doctor here? Please come. Then you take charge of that particular situation. By doing so, you'll be able to save so much life than when everybody is going to say, finally, you have people being killed there instead of being.
And before we wrap up, the aspect of command and control should be clear that whenever incident is done, every incident must have somebody in charge. The initial actions, the situation usually in a confused manner, and you can even be carried away with the situation. And I remember there was an incident when you were trying to address it, was supporting, and one of us was carried out by the situation. Because maybe you're not used to it, you have not seen somebody bleeding and crying, then how can you help? So there's a lot much to be done in terms of training so that people get conversant and some exposure to some level. But the main thing we need to understand is getting that situation under control, stabilizing that incident. Because if everyone is doing everything, that issue is not controlled. There is lack of command and control, which is very important. The incident command system must be. And you have to be bold enough. Because those who are coming to support, they have different intentions. There are those who have ideas, some who doesn't have, some will come to take selfies, pictures to post on Facebook and whatever. Others will see that as an opportunity to steal from the victim. So you have to handle all those scenarios. But remember, there are other people of good faith around you are waiting to be told what to do. So when you are firm enough, you assign roles. Even trying to control crowd. People help you when they see you look like you are the responsible person. They'll come to you and ask you questions. What next? What next? What next? So you take control of the situation.
So I want to say something.
Yes.
During an accident, please make sure first you are safe. Second, the public is safe. Because when you get to an accident, the thing is you won't go and down. What happens out there? There are cars passing by. First make the area safe. And then you can. That's very important to make yourself safe and then the area safe.
Exactly. So your safety first before you exist. And your safety means that includes even others on because you are the first one there. If that is not achieved or there is still confusion, you have a way to call for more help and give the exact information as been explained to the MITEN acronym, the MITEN communicate. And let me tell you, in most cases, incidents are usually controlled by those who are going up. Don't allow yourself to be carried away by whatever is happening. Because your intention is to support those who are impacted, the victims, and the mining of yourself. Then establishing the linkage between you and other people who are supposed to come and support. Do's and don'ts. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is John Martin. There's a thing that is connected for violence. That's way back the years now. And what just happened? This was a gas explosion. So I was the only one who was around, and people were trying to pour water onto the gas, and I know it's very dangerous. So I was torn between telling them not to get closer and maybe telling them to go ahead and put that fire. In such kind of a scenario, what should they do?
Gas explosion, if it is in a cylinder, we just need to get more. If it is in a room, a cylinder, you just need to ensure that there is more air circulation in that room. Because the gas will escape and there will not be, in the hazard will have minimized the impact of that aspect. If the gas is fixed in a supply cable or tube and the container is not affected, what you need to do is to switch off the supply and you are done. In fact, handling gas fires is the simplest when it does not explode. And that one can be demonstrated. It's only that you don't have to apply it. But with gas, you switch off the source. If you enter a room and you have that smell of gas, or methane, or LPG, what you need to do is to open the windows and doors and look at the source, not switching electricity, not triggering any action that can cause a spark. You look at the source, you switch it off. If it is a gas cylinder, it is leaking, you remove the regulator if you are able to do that. But if it has already exploded and it is gushing out, the only solution is to keep it until the content is exhausted from the cylinder. And ensuring that there is no fire risk harassment that can trigger an explosion. Making decisions is as simple as that. Having knowledge about the risk knowledge, understanding the risk. If the public that is not aware, make the efforts where necessary. Sometimes what encourages them to be around, it might be the property. Maybe we talk about Ion, somebody's house, maybe it's not there, but it is within a facility. So what are they looking as an opportunity to go in and do whatever they want to do? But they ensure that you do risk analysis and inform community. Any other question? Yes.
I don't want to go into the safety part of it because I think people who are not festival. There's a place called Sacramento. Yes. I've witnessed accident there. Now when the truck falls down, the first thing people do is to call the public. And always the public are the responders. They respond. When they respond, the dam, 5 kilometers inside 5 kilometers, that means access is blocked. The local money takes time. So it happens around 3 o'clock in the morning. Maybe the directors are sleeping, maybe all of us are in mobiles are off. So the public responds. They go there, they catch fire, they die, and it happens within 10 minutes. 100 people are wiped out. Now, what my question is, as a government, whatever policies you have, are you having any capacity to visit the area and train and tell people about safety out there? You know, the public, are you assimilating the information to the public? Because in most cases, the public responds. Another question I have is the cost. I stay along the island. At the beach, yes. Students go for holiday, or you guys will come for holiday. I walk along the beach every day. I see one child, maybe another child. The other day, you must have heard in the news, 20 children died on the beach. Is there any? When the government is planning for the response of any disaster, because they capsize, even the fishermen, they die. The other day, there were some people, some holiday, a son in they died. Is there anything the government is doing? Because these are policy issues. Are you planning to save or to do prevention or at the public beach and everywhere along the beach? Because people are dying and people don't know how to save. Nobody is responsible, nobody is watching. We just die. I just want to know where from the government perspective. Yes. The current Thank you. Thank you very much for questions and details. So for section 1, I never know there section 1. There was some accident involving somewhere we moved. There was a petrol truck accident in Yard. So this phenomenon is and I can tell you the fact that, for example, the Yard case, I visited there, support, 13 died on the spot, beyond the commission. Total number of deaths were 52. And if you go and see those victims, I think another people will die. Because 2 kilometers away from there, the spot where we lost 22 is where we call CDE market. In 1998, we lost 38. So, the villagers have been victims this the same time. Where will they land? Where will they land? If in 1998, we lost 3 people in the family, in 2021, you've lost again some members. In a similar incident, Kenyans will support everything. If we have a tanker that is not labeled petrol and it gets an accident, they will go there with it, thinking that is something good for you there. Because even when you assess, when you are trying to assess the behavior of members of the public, you know, you cannot remove that. It is there to connect the two countries. Even the one that's connects Kenya and beyond. And this product, most of it goes towards the neighboring country. Because locally, we can fight for them. We fight for them. So, it is just a game. So many trucks suffers accidents there. They put anything, even chemicals. There's a time we had an accident, I don't know where, but people went to try to see for the chemicals there, until when they realized that they were victims. They were victims with burns, then it stopped. So there has been intervention from the government. We have a craft, which is the institution of the vets, is a regulator of petroleum green business. We have the pipeline companies, and we have the business men and women within the sector, who are also contributing in terms of creation of awareness. And we realize that within these areas, the public have that information. It's only that they need to be watched all the time. When they are left in their homes, when there is no government around, they take actions with their hands. We are still continuing because it is a responsibility of the government to ensure that the citizens are safe. But it is also your individual responsibility to ensure that before you get in, you make sure that you arrive there safe without being locked right. Yet, but if you wanted yourself to be killed before you reach here, you could have taken a step before you reach this. So it's not about individual responsibility. We look at safety. It is our it starts with us. Nobody else will come and police you for your own safety. But people even beg it on poverty. What happens when you go to check statistics all over the world? It's not even in Kenya. The countries that you think are more developed. When these accidents happen, there are people finding themselves trying to save, but the government is doing much. We have policies set for the transporters. The drivers are going to train and train informed. In case of any accident, what is the individual action? If your trailer gets an accident, rolls over, what are you supposed to do immediately? We have that information. And sometimes they are well, or they are injured, they are rushed to hospital, they go to trailer. So, I think our party answered that, but we are still pursuing the campaign for safety, those areas, to seek way of addressing these issues. And we were hearing that people are now learning. Even the one that happened, I think that if you were not there before, the villagers from the informal settlement, they are already there, ready to see for it. The borders were there, but we had a good response to ensure that nothing nasty happens. Now, beyond it, within the coastal region, we have what we call beach management unit, which is working closely with the county government. We have the coast guards. The coast guard is a national outfit that are in the islands that have responsibility to participate in governments. We also have the hoteliers within the beach. So they are working together. Sometimes you get excellent cases because somebody came from one country, goes to the coast, maybe goes to public beach. They don't know how to swim, but they want to try going to the first time. So they didn't even take into consideration the hazards they are exposing themselves. That is why whenever you are planning a trip, try to understand where you are going and what are the hazards in place. Because in most cases we look at the weather. We look at the weather, but we don't look at other issues. But they exist each within the community. We have also county guys who want to see whether this has happened. But in most cases I find it is isolated. People are always down. Again, we have the Kenya Meteorological Department. They give early warning on the waves, the wind and the waves patterns. And they usually circulate for them to inform that during a particular time, you are not allowed to go and swim because of the time. So some people are caught because of lack of this knowledge, and that needs to be enhanced. Any other question because of time? Yes. Okay, I welcome. Oh, there's a question. Ladies. Ladies. Yes.
This one, I find that it's not required. When you respond, most of the time you don't know what kind of fire, what kind of equipment or whatever you need to use, because the factory chemicals or whatever you use for production is not out there in public domain. So you get there, you use water and there's explosion. You use foam and there is all kinds of reaction. So what happens is that you back up and go to the fire, consume the water. So in such situation, how do we as disaster managers come to a sort of help? So that those two issues, so that the public fire knows that if there's a fire in a certain place, the kind of equipment or materials that we're supposed to use, so that we don't endanger the responders and the surrounding community.
It's all about the guidance, and there's a lot of that, especially central guidance. Though the enforcement is an issue. The enforcement has always been an issue. One consideration I want to talk about has happened before. But we see people in time, they go there without experience. They have kids and children, which might have an advanced in their tests. They don't know. But what we talk about interoperability, the joint working concept, shared situation awareness. The managers within those institutions where we are going to support, they need to give information on what are the possible hazards. If you are coming with foam, if you are coming with water, what are you doing? They need to give you information. But trained firemen, normally they know how the fire reacts. They come into the bin, or maybe community members, you find out yourself doing. Now, what can be done about this? If you are called upon to a facility to suppress fire, try to seek information on what is the content, what is contained in that, what is banned there, because it will assist. But if you don't ask and you intervene, you might be a situation where a fireman collapses because it carries power. Some years back, they were called upon, they rushed it, they end up. Before 5 minutes elapsed, they have one collapse. The factory, one of them, so they had to pull back. It was a great factor. So, this is a situation of experience, but we can go that we check on the situation awareness. We check on the shared situation awareness when you're responding and ensuring that correct information before we proceed. The ladies. Any questions from the ladies? You don't have any questions? I asked you a question. So, I'll hand over to Mr. Mark. Yes, sir.
And then below there are so many causes of bad structures. So it's like just next to the recent fire advocacy. So the enemies has been detected most of the area and also eliminated because it's visible, it's just around the road, and it's there for the last 10 years.
What are the county governments saying? What is the information to the county? Have you ever informed the county government? It is near an estate on a public place.
It's around a road reserve, but you see people are from around to this on the road reserve. So it's just it's on top of construct houses.
Who allowed the people to construct?
Ownership is given by the local administration.
What you can do, because you are just approach the chief. Tell us the possible hazards. If that tree fails tonight, when these people are doing the house, that admin, because they have responsibility. The word admin and the chief. So they can have a political solution. Go away with the tree, or to display those behind the house. Because it is a road reserve, it's a tree there. So they are occupying the place again. The tree is there. Is it the tree or the tree?
Why the tree was there?
Why the tree was there? Yes. But it is a road reserve. Anyway, with the chief. So you can
the trees on the road reserve. Yeah. The trees on the road reserve.
Actually, we surround the road. From St. Christmas, when we go to Minneapolis, this way is a part of the road where people have seen. Where there was a recent fire, just next to this which is right down. And I've seen it for the last 10 years.
Roads are managed by the national highway, or this particular department administered with that. Secondly, the construction department, they are approved by the county. So you can approve it to the road, or the county who approves the development in that particular place with them so that they can see, so that having the project. Those two ways can help you solution.
Okay, I believe we have the Nairobi team here. Can each first individual start standing up from here and start introducing themselves? The Nairobi team. We want only current members. Who are not members, we'll talk about them. Only members first, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Rastavani. I'm a volunteer. Have had immense experience in this field. However, I'm here to help and also learn from Rona. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Shiel. I'm a volunteer as well, and thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Damesh Rosara. I'm also a volunteer. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Ajit, volunteer with India. Thank you.
You should tell us also which parts you come.
Sorry, I represent Rangoli Youth Association.
My name is Peter Ricosta, volunteer with AU.
Hi, my name is Mobilization, volunteer with
Anybody else?
Hello everyone, my name is Hubert Kabir from Norway. I volunteer for AU.
Hello everyone, my name is Patrick, volunteer
My name is Patrick Lumumba. I'm ready and willing to
continuing on, my name is Lawrence Nkolo. I'm a volunteer with the NGO as well as a trainer in St. John Ambulance.
Also representing MP Hospital, Lions.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Alifans Nyakundi. I volunteer with the NGO. Also, I'm a social worker with the Development Government. Thank you.
My name is Lawrence Ochieng Mwade. I volunteer with NGO, Waraka region. Thank you.
Anybody else from the Nairobi team? Oh, Mr. Kaka. He's a T of T, you know, trainer of trainers.
Nazir Hakada. Remember, this is a volunteer with the National Disaster Management Unit and also being appointed as the training team leader for National Disaster Management Unit, working closely with several communities for the safety and security team.
Is there anybody else from Nairobi team?
लाइव भी लोना ना चार्ज